Nigerian abductions and deaths are just the beginning. How are religious minorities being treated globally? The chair of the U.S. Commission on Religious Freedom, Robert George, will tell us. And later, in honor of Mother's Day, we'll discuss the special relationship between mothers and their sons. Physician and family expert MEG MEEKER is here to talk about her new book, Strong Mothers and Strong Sons, and a few secrets. Then we'll turn our attention to Syria's anguished Christian population. An exclusive interview with head of the Melkite Greek Catholic Church, His Beatitude Gregory III. And finally, we'll bring you a special preview of the new movie, Mom's Night Out. The World Over Live begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. Robert George, Dr. MEG MEEKER, and the Patriarch of Damascus are all straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send us a tweet. I'm at Raymond Arroyo. I'll be live tweeting throughout the show, or drop us an email at worldover@EWTN.com. Let's get started. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. After 5 years of terror and thousands of murders in Nigeria, jihadist group Boko Haram has finally gotten the world's attention. The kidnapping of nearly 300 school-aged girls and the desperate plea of Nigeria's president has shaken people and governments worldwide. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney announced that the United States would offer assistance in helping to free the girls from the jihadist group, including expertise on intelligence, investigations, and hostage negotiation. But Carney made clear in his prepared remarks that it is Nigeria's responsibility to maintain the safety and security of its citizens. British Prime Minister David Cameron struck a different tone during his questions at Parliament.
This is an act of pure evil. It's united people across the planet to stand with Nigeria to help find these children and return them to their parents. We should be clear, this is not just a Nigerian issue, it is a global issue. There are extreme Islamists around our world who are against education, against progress, against equality, and we must fight them and take them on wherever they are.
The girls, mostly Christian, are in danger of being sold and forced into Muslim marriages. Boko Haram released a video of its leader vowing in mocking laughter to sell women as commanded by Allah until the land is filled with the blood of unbelievers. More about this in our next segment. And the ongoing Sudanese bombing of its people in the Nuba Mountains is also making international headlines. A video released by the news website Nuba Report showed a bombing run that forced a priest and dozens to run for cover. The apparent target this time, a Catholic-run hospital built by a regular guest of this program. Sudanese Bishop Emeritus Makram Gassis spoke with reporters in Nairobi, directing his comments to President Omar al-Bashir.
The bombing is an outrage against innocent civilians who are seeking medical assistance from our hospital. The sick have nothing to do with the conflict that has devastated the Nuba Mountains since June 2011. I appeal to you, Mr. President, to ensure the safety of the innocent patients at our hospital, and that our hospital should be away and protected from all conflicts.
We ask you to remember the people of the Nuba Mountains in your prayers. And the siege of homes in Syria has come to an end. Under a ceasefire deal, hundreds of Syrian rebels left their last remaining positions in the heart of the central city on Wednesday. According to the agreement, the rebels were given safe passage to other rebel strongholds. The exit of some 1,200 fighters and civilians marks a de facto end of the rebellion in the battered city. Homs was one of the first places to rise up against President Bashar Assad's rule, earning a nickname, the capital of the revolution. It was home to nearly 100,000 Christians. On Thursday, rebels claimed responsibility for a bombing in a government-controlled area of Aleppo. The massive explosion flattened a hotel adjacent to a military base, along with several other buildings. Assad's troops were based in the hotel. Unconfirmed reports estimate that between 15 and 50 soldiers were killed. More on Syria and the plight of its people later in the show. And a victory for religious expression this week as the United States Supreme Court upheld the practice of prayer at public meetings. In a 5-4 decision split along ideological lines, the court ruled that legislative prayer does not violate the constitutional prohibition on establishment of religion. The case centered on the opening prayers said during council meetings of the town of Greece in upstate New York. The majority found no intention to exclude non-Christians or pressure for them to convert. For the majority, Justice Anthony Kennedy wrote that, quote, absent a pattern of prayers that over time denigrate, proselytize, or betray an impermissible government purpose, a challenge based solely on the content of a prayer will not likely establish a constitutional violation, end quote. Writing for the dissenters, Justice Elena Kagan agreed with the majority that a public forum need not become a religion-free zone. However, she said the town should have offered more diverse prayers, since public institutions belong no less to the Buddhist or Hindu than to the Methodist or Episcopalian. And the apparent campaign to change how the church treats divorced and remarried Catholics continues. In a new interview in Commonweal magazine, Cardinal Walter Casper is answering his critics after he suggested in February that it's time to grant Holy Communion to divorced and remarried Catholics. The Cardinal emphasized that mercy must be considered and that Catholics in this situation should be given a way to reconcile with the Church and re-enter full communion. Citing Pope Benedict, who, according to Casper, said these Catholics can receive spiritual communion, the Cardinal raised the ante, asking the question, why not sacramental communion? Casper also claims that while discussing the marriage crisis with Pope Francis, the pontiff said he believes that 50% of marriages are not valid. That would make it easier for them to be dissolved. The matter will be considered during the Synod of Bishops in October. A final decision from the Holy Father would likely come in 2015. This public debate will continue, so stay tuned. I've posted some very interesting pieces on this topic on my Facebook page. Give that a look. And at this week's meeting of the United Nations Committee Against Torture, the topic was clerical sexual abuse within the Catholic Church. Archbishop Silvano Tomasi, the permanent observer of the Holy See at the United Nations in Geneva, used the opportunity to trumpet what the Church has done and how it's dealt with this crisis. He noted that since 2004, 848 priests have been dismissed, and 2,000 more have received other penalties.
Most of the abusive priests that we know of have been defrocked. So there has been action. And the action has been effective because now there is a reduction of cases.
Archbishop Tomasi further warned that the UN Torture Committee would be diminishing its own credibility if it allowed ideological attacks to overshadow its mission. And another stinging rebuke from the Vatican for the Leadership Conference of Women Religious. Cardinal Gerhard Müller, the head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, reprimanded officers of what is the largest association of U.S. religious sisters for their apparent defiance of Vatican oversight. The cardinal criticized the group for honoring a theologian whose writings have been condemned as flawed by the U.S. bishops. He called it a rather open provocation against the Church. He further expressed concern over the group's recent promotion of certain philosophies and theories that he described as divergent from or opposed to revelation. Cardinal Müller urged the sisters to show more willingness to cooperate with Vatican-mandated plans for reform and reminded them that their entity is canonically dependent on the Holy See. And finally, the image of another 20th century pope could soon be hanging from the loggia of St. Peter's Basilica. According to multiple reports, the Congregation for the Causes of Saints has recognized a miracle attributed to the intercession of Pope Paul VI. The miraculous healing occurred in California in the mid-1990s. An unborn child was found to have serious developmental problems with a high risk of brain damage. Physicians advised an abortion. The mother instead entrusted her pregnancy to Paul VI. The child was born without complications and is now a healthy teenager. A formal announcement is expected once Pope Francis affirms the miracle decree. Pope Paul's beatification could be scheduled to coincide with the Synod of Bishops in October. We'll keep you posted. When we return, Chairman of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, Robert George, discusses the hot spots of religious intolerance around the globe and that terrible case in Nigeria. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. Religious minorities all over the world are being subjected to increasingly harsh treatment by their governments, particularly Christian minorities in hotspots like Syria or the recent renewed violence and kidnappings by Boko Haram in Nigeria. The climate for religious freedom seems increasingly grim. My first guest tonight is the chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. The Commission just released its 2014 report on threats to religious freedom all over the globe. Welcome back to the program, Robert George. Robert, thanks for being here.
Raymond, it's great to be back with you.
Let's start with this terrible story, and it has really captured the world's eyes and ears. These kidnappings in Nigeria, 300 girls. We've been reporting on this, and your commission has been reporting on this for years. What has taken so long?
It's difficult to get the public's attention to something bad that is happening somewhere abroad, especially if it's somewhere in Africa. It's even difficult to get the public's attention to good things that are happening in places like Africa. President Bush's wonderful efforts, for example, to combat AIDS in Africa got very little attention. But now we have something very bad. But it's not anything new, as you say. Horrific acts like the kidnapping of these girls have been going on now for years, and the Boko Haram and other radicalized extremist groups have been behind it. So I'm glad we're finally getting the public's attention, and there's a lot more to learn about what's going on there.
Yeah, I remember that story, the hundreds of boys killed in that dormitory where they burned the whole place, torched it. Thousands of people have been killed innocently there.
Less than a year ago, that catastrophe or atrocity happened. And of course, as you say, over the last 10 years or so, it's been thousands of people killed.
Now, your commission wanted to have Nigeria classified as a terrorist organization. They actually urged that in years gone by. Now it is classified by the State Department as a terrorist organization. Boko Haram, not Nigeria.
Boko Haram, that's right, not Nigeria.
Why the reluctance to do so early in this administration?
Well, you're going to have to ask somebody in the administration that question. It's something we have been strongly urging for a long time, and all I can say is that I'm glad that the administration has now gotten around to it, and now let's move forward. In fact, in our report, we recommend that in the world as we live in it today, that we no longer focus exclusively on nation states and on governments, but also on terrorist organizations who deserve designations as gross offenders against religious freedom, whether we're talking about Boko Haram or we're talking about Al-Qaeda or whoever it is.
Yeah, where is the most outrageous example of religious freedom being constricted? What country at this point?
Well, it's a tough competition. We'd certainly have to have North Korea near the top of that list. We would have China, which is becoming, it will soon be the world's largest Christian nation. There'll be more Christians in China than in any other nation.
Pakistan?
Pakistan is an abuser. It is not currently on the list of countries of particular concern, the list of the worst offenders. We call them CPCs, countries of particular concern. But our commission, for the 12th year now, is recommending to the government, to the State Department, that Pakistan be designated as a country of particular concern, which will trigger certain sanctions and steps that need to be taken.
I want to play a little bite. This is Bishop Makram Gassis. We reported on this earlier in the program. Sudan has been under unrelenting attack by the North, the government in the North.
We're talking about the Christians in the southern Sudan.
Correct.
Yeah.
And now you have the bombing of the people in the Nuba Mountains. Here is Bishop Gassis reacting to the bombing of his hospital in the Nuba area. Listen.
The Mother of Mercy Hospital is a Catholic Church health institution which offers life-saving services without distinction based on religion, tribe, or political affiliation. By targeting our hospital, I told the President, you are targeting our Muslim and Christian brothers and sisters, as well as continuing the religious oppression of the Catholic Church in the Sudan. Such unjustified action will have consequences within the Universal Catholic Church.
Why has the world looked away as these people in Sudan continue to suffer over many, many years?
Again, in Africa, which has suffered so much, the world seems not to have much interest. And yet there are millions of people suffering there, many of them suffering for their religious beliefs, a great many of them Christians, not exclusively Christians, suffering for their religious beliefs. There are Muslims who are suffering for their religious beliefs.
Russia's on the list this year.
Well, not on the CPC list, no. It's what we call Tier 2. It's a nation that we're watching. We're concerned about the Putin regime. Well, laws, for example, that discriminate against members of minority religions, laws that enable the government to step on basic civil liberties, freedom of speech, freedom of association, and so forth, sometimes in the name of protecting religious interests. So we're concerned about the situation deteriorating under President Putin in Russia.
What is the most distressing part of this job for you personally, heading up this International Religious Freedom Commission?
I can tell you what it is. It's learning facts like this one. 75% of the people of the world live under regimes which grossly abuse the religious freedom and other human rights of their people, or stand by while violent mobs or terrorists attack innocent people, Christians, Baha'is, Jews, members of minority Muslim groups, with impunity, with the government doing nothing.
Tell us about this UN. I'm going to change gears just for a little bit here, and then we'll get back to religious freedom, because this touches on it, I think. At the UN, the Commission on Torture asked the Vatican in and grilled them this week, suggesting that sexual abuse of minors is indeed torture. And they wanted to focus on even some of the teachings of the Church. Your thought on this? What is informing this? And is this, in its own way, sort of a way to strong-arm and control religious doctrines and beliefs?
The first thing that has to be said whenever any topic touching on the abuse of children comes up is that the abuse of children by anyone at any time, sexual or otherwise, is an outrage. The second thing that needs to be said is that when there are clergy of any faith, whether they are Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, and all faiths, unfortunately, have had their offenders, it's a double outrage. Where this occurs, there is criminality, and criminality should be punished with the force of the law. Now, having said all that, and it's very important to say all that, and those are the most important things to say, the next thing that has to be said is this UN business is a farce. The UN is once again bringing itself into disgrace. This is a naked attempt to attack the Catholic Church and to stigmatize and marginalize Catholics on the basis of the Church's teaching about the sanctity of human life and marriage and sexual morality. Secularist forces who simply abominate the Church's teaching on these matters and have a different gospel, a kind of pseudo-gospel of sexual liberation, have seized upon offenses that were committed by Catholic priests and errors that were made by bishops, and that's true, to attempt to attack Catholic teaching itself. And that's a disgrace that's a triple disgrace, and it ought to be called for what it is, and I call it a farce.
Tell me about Syria for a moment. We have been covering this story. The Patriarch is coming up in moments, the Patriarch of Damascus, to talk about this. For years, we've been watching what has been described as a civil war, but there are a lot of religious undercurrents there. What is the record of the Assad regime vis-a-vis minorities, and where is this headed?
This is a sad story. You asked me about the toughest parts of this job. Here's another tough job. The truth is there are no good guys currently anywhere in sight in this civil war in Syria. The Assad regime's record is abysmal. And the record of the rebels, so-called rebels, or actually in many, many cases terrorist entities, is equally abysmal. And that's why, because of the transgressions against religious freedom and the abuse of religious minorities committed by both sides, we are for the first time recommending, our commission is recommending that Syria be placed on the CPC list, countries of particular concern.
Robert George, thank you so much for coming in and for all your work. I hope you'll come back.
I certainly will. It's a pleasure being with you again.
And you can read the full 2014 report by the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. I've linked it on my Facebook page. Go there. When we return, Dr. MEG MEEKER joins me to talk about the unique relationship between mothers and sons, and she'll share secrets every mama should know when The World Over Live continues. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. My next guest has spent 25 years practicing pediatric and adolescent medicine, as well as counseling teens and their parents. In her latest book, she casts her gaze at the unique bond between mothers and sons. It's called Strong Mothers, Strong Sons, Lessons Mothers Need to Raise Extraordinary Men. In honor of Mother's Day, I sat down with Dr. MEG MEEKER to talk about the book and discuss those secrets every mom should know to strengthen or rebuild her relationship with her boy. Take a look. Meg, you start this book talking about a mother's influence over their son, and that you're really teaching them how to relate to all women. How so?
Yes. Well, I think that mothers are more in tune to their sons' emotions and the emotional side. And it's difficult because mothers don't always understand how boys are thinking and how they want to relate. But I think that it's very important for a mother to show boys how women think and how to relate to different women of all ages. And I think, you know, they teach them, mothers draw their sons out, if you will. Get them to talk a little bit more, get them to talk to them as their moms, and then to talk to other women in their lives.
Tell me the difference between the way girls are wired as opposed to boys, and why is it so difficult for a mother to sort of tap into that wiring?
Oh, well, they're wired differently from the get-go. You know that as a dad of fathers or sons and daughters. But boys are very visual people. Boys don't have to talk as much. Boys have a physical need to let their energy out and to release. And girls don't. You know, girls bond with people through talking. Boys bond with people through doing things. Go throwing a ball or being outside or doing an activity. And that's hard for mothers because they're always trying to talk to their sons and draw them out and thinking, my son doesn't want to bond with me because he doesn't want to talk. Well, that's not true. Well, he does want to bond, but in a different way.
And in the book, you talk about the importance of that verbalization.
Exactly.
And for the mother to teach her son an emotional language.
Yes.
But that's often difficult.
It's very hard. And really what I'm trying to do when my whole chapter on teach your son give him an emotional vocabulary, is not teaching a boy to feel differently or feel more, but to help him identify his feelings and say, you are angry, you are sad. Now this is what you do with your anger and your sadness. Because boys will shut down in 2nd and 3rd and 4th grade. You know, a lot of them will sort of give a stiff upper lip and you know, not cry and that kind of a thing. It's really the mom who comes along and says it's really okay not just to cry when you're little, but to have anger and to feel anger and to learn to do something with it. And I think it's important so these boys don't grow into 35 and 40-year-olds who sort of implode because they've never dealt with any kind of feelings.
They've never let those emotions out.
And
the mother, you think, is the key to sort of unlocking that?
Well, mothers are verbal, and again, they bond through talking, and dads tend not to. And dads, I think, are afraid of turning their sons into weak people by talking about emotions. And again, the purpose in the book isn't to make boys weak. It's to help them identify their feelings and know what to do with them in a healthy way.
But how do you do that? How do you create that bond, that emotional connection, that emotional vocabulary without feminizing him, Meg?
Well, because all you're doing is helping them identify feelings that are already there. Are you mad? Are you sad? And here's what you do when you're mad or when you're sad or when you're happy. But you're not, I'm not advocating getting boys to talk on and on and on about their feelings.
They don't have to join the panel on The View.
No.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not about talk. It's learning to identify their feelings and then learning what to do with them. Anger, for instance, is a huge one for young boys.
Tell me about the importance of affection, a mother's affection toward her son as he grows developmentally. I mean, you see this in your practice. What happens if it's not there, and how does that affection, or should it, change in the course of a boy's maturation?
Well, it has to change during the course of a boy's life. And I always tell parents the first 10 years of a boy's life are really about mom. Mom is the one who kind of cuddles him and puts him to bed at night, and he feels safe and comfortable with mom. But then when he moves into those pre-adolescent years, he starts to feel a little creepy with that because he's learning that he's growing into a man. So he gives a lot of pushback to mom, hurts mother's feelings. But it's very important for mothers to allow their sons to push back, and then for dad in the home to say, you know what, the next 10 years of his life are really all about me, because boys are visual and they have to see a good man in order to turn into a good man. So if a mother appropriately stands back and lets her boys become more independent during the teen years, and then they go off to college, the boys will circle back around in their mid-20s. They'll have a great relationship with their mother. If their mother doesn't let go, they start to feel that their mothers are dependent and needy. And I'm seeing a lot of that, Raymond.
Really?
Because mothers are hyper-parenting. They want to
smother the boys.
They smother the boys. They do too much for the boys. And then these boys hit 25 and they really don't know how to apply for a job or have a job or stand on their own 2 feet, because mom makes life too nice for them.
Too dominating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And they can never really blossom as individuals.
And they've got to learn to let go.
What happens when, though, and it is emotionally wrenching, when mommy becomes the enemy?
Yes.
When she is sort of pushed away. How do you advise mothers deal with that? And it is part of the natural growth of a man?
Well, I have a whole chapter. He has a bow and arrow, and the target's on your back. And that's how mothers feel. You know, as a mother of a 22-year-old son, I really felt like the enemy. But I think, first of all, we have to learn, don't take it personally. It's not about us, it's about him. Because mothers their son will say something to them, and they'll immediately say, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? It's not about you doing anything wrong. It's a process God designed for him to learn how to think on his own and to stand on his own. So not to take it personally, and to understand that even young teenage boys have temper tantrums like they did when they were 2.
You talk here about home, the importance of home. In your practice in researching and writing this book, what are the things that men most remember from their childhoods, and how does a mother fit into that? Oh,
mother is a man's home, and I never thought about that.
She is the home.
She is the home. She's the sense of home. Home is where my mother is. And I never thought about that until I was interviewing men for the book, and one man said to me, it was very chilling, he said, you know, I've been in battle, I've been in wars, and it's not uncommon that when a man is dying in battle that he cries out for his mother, not his wife. And so it's that sense that these are where my roots are. This is my initial comfort. She's the person who taught me what love was, who taught me how to trust people, who taught me who God is. Often it's the mother who teaches young boys that, and that's how they set down their roots. So they learn to be very, to stand on solid ground when they're young children through the comfort and security of mom. So that's what I mean by home.
You mentioned it a moment ago, how important the mother is to connecting the boy and later the man with faith and God. Now, I thought, and I've seen it, that it's really the father's example, isn't it, that the boy will model, and if the father is not faithful, is not a regular churchgoer, chances are the boy won't be either.
Exactly. Ideally, it's the dad in the home. But you and I know there are a lot of single moms out there.
Almost half of all moms.
Yeah. And so mothers often are the ones who take their kids to Mass, who make them do their catechism, who teach that to them. Dads are often very busy. Mom's the one who prays with them. Mom is the one who says, this is what Jesus' character is like. And sure, they look to dad and they look up to dad and they watch dads very, very carefully, but often it's mom who has the conversations about who God is and who Christ is. And they're the ones that pray more with the kids.
And they really are the bridge
They are.
to the father. Explain that, because in some relationships, in some households, you see there's almost a war between the parents for the children's affections, which is not a good thing.
Drives me crazy. And I speak a lot around the country, and I speak directly to moms about that. You cannot criticize dad in a home, whether dad is there or whether he isn't. A mother is the one who teaches her son how to connect with a dad when he maybe feels alienated. She's the one who should be respectful, look up to the dad, so that the son will follow suit and respect and love the dad as well. If a son hears his mother constantly complaining about dad and what he is doing, she will sort of pull him over to his side, and he'll start to believe that his dad really isn't a good person. Well, that not only harms the son-dad relationship, but this son's going to grow into a man, get married, and become a dad. And if all he hears is, gee whiz, being a dad isn't very good because I heard mom criticize dad and complain about dad, it really sets him up for failure as a dad,
so it poisons his ability to enter into a full relationship
and
later.
Because we're verbal people, we don't realize how devastating criticism of the husband is to the son. And we're living in a culture that dad bashes all the time. Try to find a nice Father's Day card.
Oh yeah, or a sitcom.
It's terrible.
Yeah,
a sitcom. Raymond,
Everybody Loves Raymond.
Everybody Loves Raymond.
And that's true. Sometimes.
Yes. If they watch the right channel.
That's right. Sometimes at my house, sometimes not. Let's talk about the thing that I think causes all parents to tremble a little bit, but particularly mothers. Mothers often offshore or delegate the big talk about sex to the father. Is that a good thing?
It depends. I tell parents, because parents always say, who should tell the kids? You know, who should, and I said in every family there's one person who's chicken and one person who's a really big chicken. so the lesser of the two goes. So it really doesn't matter, but I think it's important that whoever can sort of take a big deep breath and have a very respectful, honest, sometimes blunt conversation. It's very important because the bottom line is, Raymond, you know, with your kids, our kids are being talked to about sex, sexual activity, and their sexuality. And it's very important that we teach them, and usually it's the mother, because again, we're driving in the car when the kids, dad is busy and the kids are having the conversation in the back, or the son comes home from school and he's a little disturbed because of something he heard at school. So we pick up the pieces, and it's very important to sit boys down and talk to them.
Why is it so important? You have a list here of things every mother needs to know that you see in your practice. Share that with the audience.
Sexual activity during the teen years is medically very, very dangerous.
When do the teen years, how are they defined?
Starting when? 13, 12 to 13. And
it's starting earlier.
It's starting earlier, and what kids are seeing, we now know that the age of that boys first see pornography has gone from about 14 down to about 9 or 10. So kids are getting a lot of messages. Sexual activity during the teen years is very dangerous from a medical standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, and from a spiritual standpoint. So it's important that we teach kids, young boys in particular, how not to be sexually active. And I tell parents, if you don't train them not to be sexually active, they will. They'll follow the pack. And that's where the pack is going. It's also important to teach kids how to appreciate and respect their sexuality and to preserve modesty.
What is the opener for a mother approaching this, particularly this topic of sexuality, particularly single moms?
Easy.
Okay.
Easy. And here you go. You sit your son down and you say, Andy, I know now you're, a freshman in high school or in the 8th grade, and I'll bet you that you're seeing and hearing a lot of things that are a little bit confusing. Or maybe you have some friends who are sexually active. Do you? And he kind of looks down and he pretends he didn't hear what you said. So you keep on going. And you say, if I were you, and I'm growing up in this culture getting a lot of information about sex and movies and so forth, I'd be a little confused. So I know you might be uncomfortable talking about this, but I need to tell you something. So you don't have to respond, but let me tell you, it's very important that you're not sexually active during your teen years. And I know you're going to feel like an outcast and the weirdo, but that's okay. That's okay. And you start to lay it out, and then you say to him, I know it's uncomfortable, but I want you to always realize, I have all the right answers. Your friends don't. So when you hear things at school, I know you'll feel embarrassed. Please come home and ask me questions. I want to be the go-to person when you have questions about sex. And it can be done. And I'll tell you something, Raymond, the more you talk about it with your kids, the easier it gets.
Because they'll come to you
in
a crisis when something arises.
Not only your kids' friends will. I get calls from my 22-year-old's friends at college asking me questions.
Wow.
And it's
well,
delightful.
They go to the expert. That's why.
Yeah, but it's delightful, and we laugh and we giggle because I think, you know, kids want to hear what you have to say. They want to hear. And they also want to know, it's very important that we communicate to boys, your sexuality is wonderful. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And we need to communicate that because the world out there and the media is telling them it's not so great.
We had a couple of emails. One of them I want to share with you. It wasn't only one. There were several like this, where a mother found out that her child, a young boy, had a sexual encounter. And at times these were repeated. What should the reaction be? This particular mother freaked out. Dad came in. They broke off a friendship because it was a family friend. What would you recommend?
Well, that comes up all the time. You know, first of all, if he hadn't been trained how not to be sexually active, he follows the pack. So I would sit down with a son. If you're going to freak out, which most parents do, do it not in the presence of the child. Work it out and then sit down with him as a couple, if you can, a mom and a dad, and say, listen, we understand what you did, and I understand, you know, why you did it, because the dad will say, I was a young man too, but it's very important that you stop, and it's very important that you take a very dramatic right-hand turn now, because if you continue along this path being sexually active, you're going to end up with either a disease or you're going to end up really with some emotional scars. So our job now, as your parents, is to help you from now until you're married navigate a culture that's toxic, that's sexually very toxic, that's going to constantly want to lure you back into sexual activity. But because we love you and we respect you, we're going to help you avoid that. But it's very important, Raymond, not to shame the boy, because kids will never come back if you shame them. So say, you know what, your sexuality is so important to us. We're going to help you protect it and preserve it from now on. So please come to us in the future if you're thinking about this again.
And delaying that first sexual encounter, preferably to marriage, is
so
ideal.
Important.
And setting up that ideal.
Exactly.
We hear in the culture so often in kids, I mean, they walk into the dorm and there's the, I remember when I was in college, you walk in the dorm, there's the fishbowl full of condoms when you walk in. You point out in the book, condoms are not the silver bullet that they claim to be when it comes to protecting kids, in quotes, from STDs.
Exactly.
Tell us about what you're seeing in your practice.
You know, kids always ask me, but Dr. Meeker, don't condoms work? And I say, well, it depends on what infection you're talking about and how old the person is. The bottom line is condoms don't work well enough. They work best against HIV. They work poorly against infections like HPV, which we now know young boys are getting vaccinated against. They work less well against things like herpes, which is an epidemic. 1 in 5 Americans over age 12 test positive for genital herpes. That's tough stuff to hear. But this is very serious stuff we're talking about. So sending a kid off to college with a purse full or a back pocket full of condoms is not the answer. It's very, very serious.
What is the most important thing that mothers need to do that they often don't in relation to their sons?
They need to raise their expectations of their son's behavior, the way he talks, the way he treats them, the way he treats women. You know, we dumb our boys down. We treat them like they can't do this and they can't do that, and they need us to help them do it, no matter what it is, whether it's applying to college or applying to job. And we also treat our boys as though they're out of control sexually. It's one of the most devastating things that we do to boys. And we need to say, look, you are 16, you're 17, you're 18. I know this is tough, but I'm your mom. I'm linking arms with you, and you're not going to go down that route. I believe in you, and I know you can do it. So we really need to use an overused word, empower our boys to stand on their own 2 feet, to take charge of themselves, their mind, their body, and their spirit, and really launch them. And we can do it.
Yeah, no. Women civilize men. And,
we do.
And teach them how to be human. First mom, and later the missus.
And if mom doesn't do it, God help the wife.
Oh yeah, the poor wife.
Poor wife, yeah.
She's out of luck. Strong mothers, strong sons, lessons mothers need to raise extraordinary men. It's an extraordinary book.
Thanks,
you.
Raymond.
Happy Mother's Day to all you moms, including mine, and dear mother Angelica and Rebecca too. When we return, the head of the Syrian Bishops' Conference, Melkite Greek Catholic Patriarch Gregory III is here. He'll discuss the plight of Christians in his war-torn Syria and offer a take on the situation you might not expect. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to the World Over Live. He is the leader of one of the oldest Christian communities in the world, the Melkite Greek Catholic Patriarch of Antioch, and the spiritual father of a shrinking Christian community in Syria. His Beatitude Gregory III joined me recently in studio to brief us on his suffering people, why he rejects interference from the U.S. and the UN in Syria, and what you can do to help. Here's my interview with his Beatitude, Gregory III. Paint a picture for this audience about the importance of Antioch and the territories that you represent. Of course, you're president of the Bishops' Conference for all of Syria.
Well, I am very happy to be here, and I bring to this wonderful country the peace of the Holy Land and the peace of the risen Lord. And also I am bringing a very special way the greetings and the love and the peace in spite of war of Damascus, which is the very real place of a very important event in the history of the Church, which is the baptism of St. Paul, who came as warrior, I can say as jihadist.
No, he wasn't a jihadist.
Well, anyway, he was real fanatic of his faith, and he changed mind. That is the importance of this point of changing mind in Damascus. And I can tell you, before Antioch, the first place of the presence of Christianity in the Middle East, I think, is Damascus. I have good news for you. In this very difficult time and year in Syria, the 4th year of the crisis, after 91 churches were destroyed or damaged in all Syria, I am willing to build a new church in the suburb of Damascus, in Jaramana, most targeted with mortars, but we will build church to give power and hope to the people. We are there, we will remain there in spite of all these things.
This has to break your heart. As the patriarch of the region, and knowing and being steeped in the history, the importance not only for the people of Syria, but for the people, Christians of the world. This is a living memento of the early Christian faith. And to watch it be destroyed, to look at these photos of these churches lying in ruins, mortar damage, and never to be, I mean, how can you rebuild some of these churches?
We build churches and we can build again churches. We'll start soon. and therefore I can take the opportunity to make some propaganda for my church, because this church is in the name of St. Paul, who was called the Apostle of the Nations. So I am addressing now all churches with the patron of St. Paul in the whole world, and bishop conferences and all nations, calling them, come, Apostle of Nations who brought to you, all nations, the faith. Now he asking you to help to build a church on his patron as Apostle of Nations in Damascus.
Your Beatitude, how can you build at this moment? This so-called civil war has been going on now for years and years.
Civil war, no. That is no civil war in Syria. No civil war. No, it is a war against Syria and from outside in Syria.
You mean
is the very definition.
Insurgents from outside have come in your opinion. You do not side with these so-called freedom fighters, the rebels that have come in.
They are inside opposition, I can't confess, but very few and very weak and very divided. A pity. I would like to have a powerful opposition.
To the Assad regime.
To have dialogue, to have partner, to have vision. If you don't have vision, what for? What to destroy?
How has the church been treated under the Assad government?
As Christian and as citizen. I can tell you, maybe Syria is the most beautiful place to live in. We are happy. There were problems, like in all other Arab countries and maybe the whole world. The only one state in the whole Arabic world which Islam is not the religion of the state is Syria, after Lebanon. Lebanon is confessional, but out of Lebanon, only Syria, the president must be Muslim. For now, maybe later he will not be on necessary Muslim, he can be something else. I hope it will be more development.
But your Beatitude, at the moment, this is a very difficult environment in which to try to exercise your ministry. 100,000 people have been killed in the last few years. Christianity, the Christian community is utterly scattered. Tell me about this refugee crisis that you're facing. Many of your people are simply not at home.
We have altogether 24 million Syrian citizens. Up of them, 1.75 million are Christians, mostly Greek Orthodox, Greek Catholic, Syrian Orthodox, the Maronite, Syriac, Armenian, and so on, and Latin, and so on. And we have now about 450,000 of them displaced inside, and some of them outside of Syria. Mostly we have 42,000 in Lebanon, which is a good thing because we will be back anytime. But for the huge aspect of this tragedy, I think the immigration is still not too high.
You are encouraging people to stay.
And I am asking them to stay and helping them to stay. And relief service, we start all patriarchs, bishops, nuns, priests are now a welfare association to help, to relieve. Christians mostly, but also Muslim.
Sure.
We are near to our people. Now we become nearer and nearer, and we experience such a power of the faith. I can dare say with love, with thanks, that we are at the school of the faith of our people. We are.
Are you supportive of the Assad government at this point?
I am Syrian. I am supporting Syria and more.
And does that mean supporting the Assad government?
Not necessary, not necessary. We are supporting stability. Whoever can give me stability, I am for him.
You are not supportive of U.S. involvement or UN involvement in the region.
I am against any kind of involvement of the region. Let us alone. We have such a powerful tradition to live together. Still now, we live each other. We love each other. Till now. Till now, no real problem between Christians and Muslims. No. The war is not sectarian war. It is not war between Christians and Muslims. It is partly maybe a war between Muslim and Muslim, you know.
And the Christians are sort of caught in the crossfire here.
No, we are mediator. We are really mediator of equilibrium and of love and reconciliation, the church and the people.
Let's talk about your work with the International Catholic Migration Commission. What are they doing to help you on the ground?
Well, I am very proud to be member of this
the board?
Wonderful commission, International Catholic, dedicated to help, and my friend, Mr. John Klink, who is the president of this association, he organized the whole trip to the States to be able to raise the voice of love and of many suffering people in Syria and outside Syria, coming from Syria. And they are doing a lot, and therefore I am very happy to say now thanks for this wonderful work they are doing, for not only for Syria and outside Syria, but for many places in the years. And I hope that through this program they will be more known, and they will have more help to continue and to fulfill their mission.
What would you like people to do who are looking in on this crisis and are very confused about what they're seeing on the ground, what they're hearing, the reports coming in?
Well, the Holy Father prayed for Syria on the 7th of September.
A decisive moment.
On the morning, 3 men were killed in Syria in one room for their faith. The Holy Father prayed for peace of Syria, his beloved Syria, and Saturday, Sunday, Monday, the planned attack of USA were vanished. And I think it was a little change in the whole world because of this prayer of 7th of September in the square of St. Peter. And that is for me a real miracle. Never lose the courage to pray. The courage to pray, especially when you are under such situation. It is a real courage because you believe in the power of God to give you power. May I pray for Syria?
Please.
Almighty and merciful God, grant that just as you made yourself known to Saul on the road of Damascus, that you may soon convert hearts to peace in Syria, and that its people who have fled may soon return to their homeland. We ask you blessing on those who, like your Son, have become refugees and have no place to call their own. Look with mercy on those who today are fleeing from danger, homeless and hungry. Bless those who work to bring them relief. Let us see also the CMC group of migrants, and bring them relief, inspire generosity and compassion in all our hearts through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. You can help the Patriarch by visiting the International Catholic Migration Commission at their website, give.icmc.net/Syria. Enter this information into your browser and it will take you directly to their Syria aid page. You can also call 888-265-8747. And before we go tonight, we've got a special preview of a new movie, Mom's Night Out. It's the story of a young wife and her friends who long for a peaceful grown-up evening of dinner and talk, a long overdue Mom's Night Out, while their husbands watch the kids for a few hours. What could possibly go wrong? EWTN's Michelle Johnson sat down recently with 2 of the film's stars, Sarah Drew and Sean Astin. Take a look.
Mom, Ben's playing in the toilet again. Surprise! We made you late. Where's sugar?
Oh, no. He's going to put that in his mouth and become one of the 400 estimated people that die from acute salmonella. Do not put that finger in your...
It's all going to be okay. Just give it 5 years. Year 7 or 5.
You have to choose to do something for yourself.
I planned this mom's night thing for Saturday.
You planned a mom's night? Wow, you look amazing.
Ladies, tonight is our night, and we look good.
I thought the film was fabulous, and one of the things that I liked about it the best was when your character has her crisis. You, as the husband, don't go ballistic on her. You actually support her. Did you learn anything from actually playing this role?
There's just right behavior and wrong behavior. Really, the movie's talking about right behavior, and it's counterproductive to debate your spouse if they're having a moment, or try and force yourself on your spouse at that moment, or tell them.
Well, Sarah, you are just beginning your journey as a parent, right? Your child is about 2 years old now.
Yeah.
Has this influenced you at all in this role itself?
This movie in general has made me fall more in love with my parents and remember all of the ways in which they poured their lives out into my life growing up. And that reflects onto my experience as a parent to my son. My parents were just absolutely amazing, loving, incredible parents. And I've had parenthood modeled so well for me growing up. But yeah, I mean, it's a crazy, wild journey. And I think the biggest lesson that I've learned about parenthood through doing this movie is to just rest and learn how to just be present and acknowledge that you're not perfect, and that's okay, period.
Sean, since you just said a few minutes before off camera that you're kind of a maybe a Catholic. What did you say?
Almost Catholic.
An almost Catholic.
Honorary
Catholic. Why did you say that?
I played Rudy, which is about a kid wanting to go to the important Catholic university in the country. I was in Lord of the Rings, which is a Tolkien story. He's a very important Catholic voice of the 20th century. And I went to Catholic school for 3 years, and my mom's had a tortured kind of Catholic journey herself. And so I feel like, you know, I wanted to get confirmed when I was in 8th grade. My dad, this is a long story, so we could do it. But basically, I feel I took First Communion in the Vatican on accident. It goes. I could go into other stories, but I've talked to a lot of priests, some of whom are anyhow. I'm very close to the Catholics.
Allie, it's me. Just wanted to let you know that everything's going great here. We're all good. We're gonna take a little trip to the hospital.
Searing pain! Oh!
Life is about finding the meaning and the joy and the purpose in all the chaos.
Hon, your job.
It's hard, I know.
Important. That's what I was gonna say.
I know the most of everybody.
I'm a mess, but I'm a beautiful mess. I'm his masterpiece, and that's enough.
Mom's Night Out hits theaters on Friday, May 9th. Be sure to check it out. Until next week, the show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. The links are on my website, and I'll bring you the latest news and commentary throughout the week, and we post the entire show there as well. If you'd like to sign up for my free e-blast, I'll send you all kinds of exclusives. Go to the center of the website page at RaymondArroyo.com. Sign up for the e-blast. Join us next week. We will continue to examine the worldwide problem of religious freedom with the director of the Center for Religious Freedom at the Hudson Institute, Nina Shea, and much more. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thanks for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. We'll see you next time. Bye now.